Welcome back to another episode of the Prepared School Psych Podcast, where we are dedicated to enhancing your effectiveness as an assessment professional. Today, we have Amber Gibson joining us. Amber is a dedicated school psychologist with a passion for sharing her extensive learning experiences at every educational tier. She boasts a proven track record of outstanding performance, consistently achieving commendable results with students across all grade levels. In recognition of her exceptional work, she was even named the North Carolina School Psychologist of the Year in 2021. Congratulations.
Thank
With
you.
15 years of experience in the field, Amber is well-versed in leadership roles, providing invaluable support to fellow school psychologists through consultation, test management, collaborative efforts, and the development of training programs that align with specific learning disability policies and multi-tiered systems of support practices. Currently based in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, she serves 3 schools with unwavering commitment and is the current president of the North Carolina School Psychology Association. Beyond her professional endeavors, Amber finds joy in her familial roles, being a devoted wife and mother to 2 daughters. She approaches her work with a deep sense of purpose, ensuring that every student under her care is equipped with the tools necessary to achieve success. It's truly a pleasure to welcome you to the Prepared School Psych Podcast, Amber. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Jenny, for the welcome. Thank you.
Well, we always like to kick off with a very important question everyone wants to know. What is your favorite TV show that you are watching right now?
It's funny that you asked that. I have 2 girls, one that is 8 and one that is 2. So most of the time, my days are filled with Bluey, Blippi, and Miss Rachel. But I do occasionally find time to watch some true crime shows. I'm a big crime person. I like Snapped. I also like Blue Bloods, and I also like Law and Order.
Law and Order, the original,
Yes.
always the best, always the
Yes.
best. Absolutely. Yes, I have myself watched a couple Bluey episodes as well. I like that some of those shows have some great storylines for the adults who have to watch them alongside their children.
Yes, I love those shows, especially I can relate to Chili the mom so much with my girls, so I'm just like, "I feel you. I really feel you."
Well, in one sentence, how would your colleagues describe you as a school psychologist?
I think that they would say that I am dedicated, resourceful, and hardworking.
Those are great words. Great words. Well, you've been a school psychologist for a number of years. At what point in your journey did you become involved in your state association?
I actually became involved with the North Carolina School Psych Association in 2015. I'm not a native to North Carolina, so I was
Okay.
really unfamiliar with state associations. And at that time, I worked in a small district. So I was looking for a way to connect with other school psychologists. And Dr. Denny is the one who reached out to me. And he was like, "You'd be great for this position as a mountain representative." So I joined the board then, and then had my daughter, my eldest. So I took a break, but I still kept in with the advocacy piece, giving feedback and supporting other practicum students as they go through their school psych journey. And then I was approached by a friend of mine who I actually supervised during her practicum to run for president. So that is where I stand right now as the president of the North Carolina School Psych Association.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
As a state association president, what are some of your key initiatives? What are you really passionate about working on right now?
We're really passionate about working on, of course, raising pay for the psychologists here in North Carolina. We're like in the I think one of the lowest in the state in the nation when it comes to paying our school psychologists.
Right.
The second is finding the school psychologists to fill positions because we have many counties that do not have a school psychologist at all. And
Wow.
we're trying to encourage our school psychs to come back to remove that middle person of the contract company. I'm
Mhm.
not saying contract companies are bad, but it's really nice to have a school psych on staff.
Mhm.
And another thing that we have been working on is establishing an online virtual program for those who do want to do school psychology but, you have that 1-year internship and, you have to leave your job and everything. So we are working with the NC government to, get that program up and running so people who want to become a school psychologist or go back to school can do that program online, part-time, and then
Mm,
we can work out the internship piece later. So those are our top 3 big things right now.
mhm. That's incredible. So much work on things that a lot of times, are more at that university level.
Mhm.
That's interesting collaboration piece that you're able to work on. I'm curious how did that conversation start?
The conversation started, realizing that school psych programs often don't put out a lot of school psychologists. And I give my cohort, for example, my cohort, there were over 24 people in it when I started. When I graduated, there was 10. So we wanted to figure out what were the barriers, what was causing people to leave the program. Most of it's too challenging, work schedules and internship. Sometimes people have to take unpaid internships. And in
Right.
today's economy, that's just not feasible.
Mhm.
So Dr. Denny and other legislators, and of course us, we've been working to develop an online program with Appalachian State University cater to that need of, I need some classes to be online. I need some classes to be at night. I need some flexibility in this schedule if I want to do this. So the whole thing was like, we have to provide these people with more flexibility
Mm,
because, back when we went to our program, it's okay, to take that year and do the internship. But now that's just not feasible. So it was really important to bring that piece into it to acknowledge that we need more flexibility in our field.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, thinking back, my cohort was I think we had the same number, that when we started and we ended, but we were only a group of 13 people. So when you
Yes.
were talking about, it's pretty small groups that are
Yes.
graduating, yet as we know, state after state after state, there's shortages.
Yes, yes. And that's one of the things, I've tried to point out to people is like, we start out big. It's kind of like med school. We start out big and then the numbers start dwindling down. And we wanted to figure out why are we dwindling down?
Yeah.
Because we should be producing more psychs than we do.
Well, and we need to.
Yes.
We need to
Yes,
be.
we really
Yes.
need to.
Well, what is an accomplishment in your role as president that you're most proud of right now?
One of the things I'm most proud of is getting quality professional development with I forgot his last name, but Brian, he's with School Psych AI. And getting him to, because I know a lot of districts are, hesitant with AI,
Mhm.
and I thought it would be very beneficial to have him come out and speak and say, "Here's the ethical part of AI, here's how you can use it." And, reaching out to it was a big election year for us and having conversations with our now new state superintendent of public education, Mo Green, and having him come on board. So typically we don't have, any try not to make any political affiliations, but we as an organization really felt it was important for people to know about the candidates this year and to make informed decisions. So my goal was to really push some old barriers and kind of, break out of some old habits and, stepping out of comfort zones and reaching out to give quality development and quality trainings to all of our psychs in there, and that'll make them want to be more involved with the organization.
Well, I'm curious, how did that conversation go about AI? I find over here in California, I get to do a lot of professional development, and
Mhm.
there's some school districts who ask me to integrate it into the conversation. Like, how can you use it well and efficiently in some of the topics I'm discussing? And then I've had other school districts where I've brought it up myself, and the director will say something, "We don't use AI in this district." And in my head, I'm looking around the room at the 35 psychologists, and I'm like, somebody's using AI in this district.
Right.
Like, it's too big of a group that no one's using it. But all right, we'll go with that. So I'm
But
curious, how did that conversation kind of land with your members?
and, that's a really quick question because in my district, my boss was like, "No, we're not doing AI whatsoever. No, exit, no." And I presented it to, the membership. I said, "I want you to learn about the way AI is, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the way that you should use AI. And
Mhm.
I said, "I know in my district, they say no to AI, but I really like it when I have to do summaries. For me,
Mhm.
I don't want AI to write my report because I love that those are my words, my time and effort, but sometimes I have a hard time just summarizing it all together
Mhm.
succinctly so that it's easy to read and it's parent friendly
Yes.
and in a way that's not redundant. And so that's one way that you can use AI. And I said, I also use, AI when I'm looking for recommendations.
Mm.
Some recommendations is something that we're always looking for. We're always looking for something new. And I'll use it for recommendations. And then I also say, with a caveat, you got to be careful because you know that AI will hallucinate and give you some crazy recommendations.
Yes.
So just be careful.
Yes.
And even the AI might give me a summary, I'm gonna modify the wording because sometimes it'll come out really too formal. So I encourage people who came to the training to really play around with it
Mhm.
and see how it can be used in a way, that you feel it's best to help you. It might be organization of things, it might be recommendations, but I I just hesitate against using it to write my entire evaluation
Yeah.
because in the court of law, if you get called to court, you don't want to say, well, I had AI write my report. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
So that's one caveat I have there. But everyone was really, appreciative of that. Like, even though my director said no, I said, yeah, I do use it for my summaries. I do. And she's aware, that I do, but there are some good applications for it.
And I will say those are probably 2 that I use as well.
Hmm.
A lot of times I'm trying to I think about, 10 o'clock at night, the meeting's
Hmm.
the next day, your
Yeah.
brain's barely working, and you're trying to figure out a better way to explain this. Let's stop
Hmm.
using all this jargon. And so parent friendly is definitely one of probably my most often prompts.
Hmm.
And I have found that for the recommendations, adding in a request to
Hmm.
include the resource where you're
Yes.
getting this recommendation can
Hmm.
help with the I love that term that you use, that AI hallucinates.
Yes.
Yes, I've heard I remember going to a legal training and they said AI will give you plausible information,
Yes.
but not always truthful
Yes.
information. And I think that's a important distinction as we're going through and making decisions about children's lives
Yes.
based on this information. I got to
Yes.
be really cautious with something that's going to give me plausible
Yes.
information versus truthful information.
Yes. And again, that's why I strongly, do not recommend people use it to write their reports, even though I know there's people who do, and I'm not, here to bash or anything. But for me, when I go into a court, in case I'm ever called up, I want them to know I wrote that report.
Yeah. Yes. I agree. I agree. Well, we have a lot of newer school psychologists who listen to the podcast. So when you think back to when you were beginning in your career, what advice would you give to someone who's starting out?
As I've been in this career for 15 years, I have grown to learn, and some people say, why do I say this? Not everybody is your friend in the educational system. So be careful with who you share your information to, and be truthful in the place that you work because someone's always watching you. Always be careful with social media, and what you say and what you post online. And I don't want it to seem across as a stress, but these are things that I've experienced myself
Mhm.
and things I've had to learn from. I would also say that boundaries are very important.
Mhm.
I am very strict with my work hours, 7:30 to 4:30. I do not bring work home. They do not pay me after 4:30 to do that. Now, that does not mean that if there's a crisis or if I'm in an IEP meeting that I won't stay late for that.
Mhm.
But anything after 4:30, it can wait till the next day. And some other things I've learned were just, I don't keep work email on my phone.
Mhm.
If it's really important, they will call me. I really just have some better boundaries than I did when I first came into the field. I was a big people pleaser. I wanted to please everybody, make everybody happy, have the fancy charts in my report that were color coded and everything else. And as you go on, you just learn about what's really important. and
Mhm.
what really matters when you're working with kids.
Mhm. I know boundaries is definitely one of the things that I talk about as well. I think that I'm really good about establishing
Mhm.
boundaries, but I always struggle with enforcing the
Mhm.
boundaries. I mean, just the other day, I had one of my directors send me a text message at like 5:30 in the evening. And she goes, "Do you have a minute to talk?" And I knew at that moment I could have easily ignored it.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I'm like, she doesn't do this very often. I was
Mhm.
wondering, was it an emergency?
Mhm.
But I will tell you, it took me 10 minutes to respond,
Yeah.
to make it that decision. Like, do I do this? Am I teaching her that I'm available 24/7 now? Like, so I'm curious, as you said at the beginning of your career, a little bit more of a people pleaser.
Mhm.
How did you work on enforcing those boundaries with all the adults we work with who want to push those boundaries? We talk a lot about kids pushing boundaries, but there's a lot of adults we work with that are pushing those boundaries as well and testing those. So what kind of suggestions might you give to somebody?
It's important to always have face-to-face conversations with people and not communicate everything via a text or email because so many things could be misinterpreted.
Yeah.
There are times when I have had staff text me at like 7 o'clock at night and I have not responded. And the next day they were like, "Well, did you get my text? Why didn't you respond?" And one of the things I just say is that, yes, I did get your text. However, this was time with my family and I did not see your text as an emergency. I knew that it was something that could wait until the morning. So I'm very sorry that I did not see the urgency in your text, but that is my family time. And
Yeah.
usually they kind of take it down a notch in tone and see that, I'm not out to attack. I'm not fully ignoring them. I'm not mad or anything. It's just a boundary. So, and it's gone really well for me, and then there are times where some people don't listen to my boundary and then I have to get admin involved and just say, I have had this conversation with this person about contacting me after hours or asking me about an evaluation that is not due for another 60 days. And, and I have stated, here's are the components that I need. It is not done yet. So as soon as I get those components, it will be done. And,
Okay.
and I hate to do that conversations because some people might think, oh, it's high schoolish behavior. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's called setting a boundary and just being firm about it. I can't make the parent turn in the rating scale any sooner. I can't make the
Exactly.
teacher do it any sooner, and sometimes the kid is absent so much that I can't do a cognitive or achievement. So, there are things beyond my control and I just communicate that. Communication is really important in this field and just being firm about it and having those, those discussions first with that individual. And then if it keeps happening, then you just bring admin involved.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Well, I know a lot of people listening are interested in maybe trying out some leadership roles. What
Mhm.
advice would you give to someone who's interested in it but is hesitating as well?
Well, again, like I said, when you enter into a leadership role, again, you have to remember that not everybody is your friend.
Mm.
When coming into NCSPA as the president, I made it very clear that there are going to be decisions that you will like and decisions you will not like, and it's nothing to do with you. It is to do with the betterment of the organization. And I feel that in any leadership position, you just want to make sure that you speak firmly but calmly. You can communicate your point across without yelling, without saying foul language or anything like that. You can get it across. And yes, you might hurt some people's feelings, but it's nothing to do with you. So you really have to kind of remove yourself from the situation a lot if you want to be a leader and just kind of look at it from the outside in. But that doesn't mean that you don't care about people or anything like that. There were a lot of decisions that I made at NCSPA that ruffled people's feathers and people said things and I just went on about my day. And that's another thing you have to learn is that, when you're a leader, people are going to say things about you that, you may not like. As I say, it's really none of my business. So just keep moving, keep putting the foot forward and I'll be honest, there were times I cried, because I messed up or I felt like I wasn't doing things right and I needed to lean on my president-elect for support or guidance and my executive, leadership committee to make sure that I'm doing things right, and they were so supportive. So make sure you have a group of people that do have your back and do wanna hear your opinions and when you're frustrated and when you're angry, and then when you're making those decisions that are hard, you can talk to them about it.
Mhm. Well, I think just being in the role as a school psychologist, you get a lot of those practice moments
Yes.
of not everyone adores you. And
No.
sometimes half the people at the meeting are mad about what you said. And then
Mhm.
at the next meeting, the other half the people are mad about what you said. And really, you know, figuring out what is that main goal. And like you said, as an association president, it's for the betterment of the
Mhm.
association. And, you know, as school psychologists, I think we're often very easily able to say, well, like, we're making these decisions for this kid.
Mhm.
I'm not here to make everyone else happy.
Right.
We got to figure out what's going on for this kid. And so I think being able to generalize that to
Mhm.
what is good for this organization,
Yes.
simple, but not easy.
It's not. Even with parents, you get an angry parent and they're calling you everything but a child of God, but I still talk to them calmly.
Hmm.
And by the time I've done calmly, a lot of times they just want someone to listen,
Yeah.
and to hear them out. And I don't take it personally. And people like, she called you. I'm like, okay. I mean, I've been called worse, but I know it's not true. So if you just be true to yourself, you'll be good.
I remember once being in one of those really interesting meetings where the parent was yelling, and afterwards, the one of the other team members said, "Jenny, you were so calm, like he was yelling at you." And I said, "He's mad, but he's really not mad at me. I didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
He's mad about the situation. He's mad that this is going on for his child. I just
Yes.
happened to be the person he was directing it towards, but I
Yes.
know it's not really, he's not mad at me. So I'm not going to hold on to that."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Again, one thing to say it, another thing, I'm not saying I didn't
Yeah.
cry on the way home either, but it's still it's one of those skills we need to practice about taking care of ourselves and realizing, am I gonna hold on to this or I'm gonna let this one go?
Right. And I absolutely agree with that. You can't carry it with you. And that's why I say you got to leave work at work.
Yeah.
My husband will often ask me, well, how was your day at work? And I'm like, I don't want to, I don't want to talk about it. I was like, I could tell you it was a little crazy, but I'm here now. And I just want to be present with my family.
Love I love that. Well, many school psychologists do want to become more involved in leadership roles, but there is obviously a time commitment. So,
Hmm.
how do you manage your time and make it work, especially because you're very clear about all these different roles and leaving work at work and having this important family time? How do you now integrate in more?
So that's a great question. When I was approached about being president, I was nervous because I was like, this is going to occupy so much of my time and I don't know what I'm going to do. Or I was like, all my boundaries are just going to go out the window and everything else. But luckily, a lot of the leadership on NCSP are parents themselves. So we were able to talk about having, meetings during days, like during the school day. Like could we find one day during the month where we could meet during the day because we have families and I honored that. And so we found that. And then every other month when the leadership committee met, I would say, I know this time is important, but can we move it to like 8:30 or whatever after my girls go to bed so I could be
Mm,
better focused. And that was like every other month. And then I had a requirement for people to always check their email once a week and that's it. And then they would have their monthly committee meetings once a month. And so people really liked that approach that, I honor their time, I was respectful of their space, and that I understood if they had boundaries or something that, came up.
mhm,
So that is how I was able to do it. I really don't feel like to be president, I didn't feel like I was worried I was gonna be overworked and stressed, but I really wasn't. I was really went with the flow. If meetings didn't happen, they didn't happen. I just, kept myself evil killed. I just, went with the flow with being president. And then I'm hoping, as our new president-elect comes on, that she keeps the same flow, that we just, we accommodate people who have families or who live far away, and we have all of our meetings virtually. We only have one meeting a year that's in person. That is our strategic planning retreat where we focus on the goals for the upcoming year. And then we have fall conference when there's a in-person board meeting there as well. But other than that, everything is online.
I love that. Well, is there anything else that you would like to share or promote about your state association?
I really want to just give a shout out to our association for working really hard to help the families and everyone affected in Western North Carolina down there. We advocated very hard for a relief bill and it got passed. And so now we have $5 million that are dedicated just for school psychs, mental health professionals to go down there and provide support to the counties and districts down there. And I'm just amazed that we were able to pull it off. We have a great lobbyist in there. We are working to do some more restructuring right now as we number the interest, to do some of NCSPA's stuff has kind of dwindled. So we need to figure out how to get people to come back to NCSPA. I feel like we had a drop after COVID and people are just overwhelmed with everything right now. So how do we make NCSPA important enough for them that they want to join? So that's kind of where we're focused at right now.
And if someone was interested in getting more involved, would you suggest your website, social media? What's the best way to kind of
The
get in
best way
contact?
to get in touch with us is to go to our website, which is ncspaonline.org, and just reach out to one of our leadership members on there. Our emails are on there. You can email us and we'll be happy to, give any information about our organization.
Wonderful. We'll make sure to put that website address in our show notes too. So anyone who
Okay.
didn't have that pen and paper out quite quickly enough to get that. Awesome. Well, this podcast is called the Prepared School Psychologist. When you think of the term prepared, what do you do to help yourself feel more prepared in your role?
I always make sure I'm grateful, and I always make sure that I know the child fully. Like, I want to get a full picture of the child with all the assessments and everything. And then when I am ready to evaluate, I want to be prepared to say, this is what I feel is going on. It also means, having the skill set to say no and the skill set to grow. A lot of our psychs, as I say, old hats, may be resistant to some change, but being prepared just means always be willing and open to change. There might be some new things out there that are interesting. Like our director encourages us to, look into a field that they're really interested in, and mine is trauma and
Mm,
neuropsychology. So I follow a lot of professional development on that. And I feel that doing that helps me be more prepared when I work with kids.
mhm.
I always encourage people to pursue additional interest outside of school psychology.
I love that. I love that. Well, I want to say thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you for sharing all of your wonderful feedback and wisdom for all of our listeners. And just thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny, for having me. I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on the Prepared School Psych podcast. We encourage you to leverage the resources gained from this episode and reach out with any follow-up questions. Until next time, have a great rest of your day. That concludes another episode of the Prepared School Psych podcast. And I hope today's discussion equipped you not just with knowledge, but also the confidence to take action. Remember, every conversation we have and every resource we share builds a bridge towards a more inclusive and empowering learning landscape for our students. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast for more insightful conversations and resources to support your journey. Share this podcast with colleagues. We would love it if you would also rate and review the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Just a reminder, everyone, the information and advice provided in this podcast are for guidance purposes only, and all listeners are required to follow both federal and state law and their own school district guidelines and policies. Thank you.